What's going on, YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today we are reacting to the one and the only Daniel Jeremiah and his latest 2024 NFL mock draft. You know, it's funny, right before I ended up hitting record on this, I was like, man, is there another good mock draft to react to this week? Maybe I'll just do the one that Dane Brugler did, and then we'll bounce back, maybe do an extra one next week. And then as soon as I said that, I checked Twitter, and Daniel Jeremiah posts a mock like 30 minutes before recording this, so I'm all over it, man. You know, Daniel Jeremiah is one of those guys that if you're in this space, you look up to him. He's an opinion that you're wanting to know, and really tapped into the league, man. He's not only a great scout, but also like he knows where potential GM leans are, whose types are whose, and ultimately some of the early chatter of who likes who. So especially at this point in the process, this is where it gets really exciting because we start to get little tidbits of, okay, well, Pittsburgh likes this guy. Well, Washington, if their preference, if anything, it would be this, stuff like that. So really excited to dive into this mock draft. Let me know what you think about Jeremiah's first mock draft that we've reacted to here this draft cycle. Let me hear it down below in the comment section. Who goes too high? Who goes too low? Who's your favorite team? And did you like the pick that Daniel Jeremiah gave your squad? Cool. Let's go ahead and jump right into Jeremiah's mock. Obviously, 1-2, we're going to see a lot of this. I think right now, if I had to guess, Williams is the Bears guy at 1. They did just have the interview with Cliff Kingsbury. I don't think there was anything to buy into that. I don't think he's going to be the Bears offensive coordinator next year. I think this is just more so like, hey, well, you just got to work with him last year. So what were your thoughts? So I think it's just extended scouting. But I think I have Drake May at 1, but Williams brings more to the table that's special than May does. May just doesn't have nearly the downfalls or the pitfalls that maybe Williams has in some areas, like time to throw and playing within structure, things like that. So I prioritize May, but I can see where the special of Caleb Williams ultimately is the draw. Bears go in that direction, draft him at 1, making it a really simple choice for Washington at 2. They're going to get one of those two guys and be super happy. Patriots, Jane Daniels. So the mock that we reacted to on Friday, which, by the way, happy divisional weekend. You're seeing this on Sunday. Hopefully Saturday's games were great, and hopefully Sundays are as well. Patriots. So in Dane Brugler's mock, they went Marvin Harrison Jr. And I mean, to this point, my mock moving forward, it's either going to be Jaden Daniels here, Marvin Harrison Jr. Don't expect New England to trade. It's going to be one of those two key positions they need to hit on. This is such a deep receiver class that, Penix is my QB3. But Daniels, I mean, he's not far behind. And honestly, it comes down to ceiling versus floor. Daniels probably has the higher ceiling than a Michael Penix, while Michael Penix is, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And I like that because I think he has a really interesting blend of skills that you don't normally see from college QBs. But the guy with a higher floor, but maybe a limited ceiling. So because of that, like, if the draft were tomorrow and, New England, for whatever reason, calls me, I'd go Daniels here, tap into the wide receiver pool that's left at the top of the second round. Because there's going to be an A.D. Mitchell, an Xavier Worthy, someone of that guy. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr., I don't know. His stock's pretty high right now. Keon Coleman, I wouldn't doubt that maybe he slips into the early second round. Xavier Legette, there's a lot of receivers, and only so many can go in the first round. So someone is going to have them fall into 35, into the second round, and New England's going to get a great value there. So I think you got to go QB, then go receiver in the second round. So I ultimately kind of agree more here with Daniel Jeremiah than Dane Brugler. But hey, if you're a Pats fan, I want to hear from you. Like, what's your ideal 1-2, pick combinations? Who you taking the first? Who you taking the second? Easy selection here. Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Arizona Cardinals. We've already said as much as that can be said about Maserati Marv. Arizona needs a clear-cut number 1. And I think if you added a Marv and then, oh man, Michael Wilson is the possession plus type. Really just a true possession guy is the number 2. Rondale Moore is interesting. Trey McBride all of a sudden kind of becomes probably the number 2 target in that offense. Okay, fun. Maybe they bring back James Conner. He just makes everyone else look better because they get knocked down a little bit of a role. Here's a surprise. Rome Odunze before Malik Neighbors. I think we will see this. For me, they're all about a half step down from one another. Like, Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably the best receiver that I've scouted. It's him or Jamar Chase. Julio Jones was just a little bit before I started to really get deep into the draft and became like a big passion of mine. So it's Marv or Jamar Chase. Those are the two best receiver prospects I've ever scouted. And then I think a half tier below is Malik Neighbors. Honestly, let me revise that. A quarter tier below is Malik Neighbors, and then maybe another half tier below that's Rome Odunze. But I've had Rome Odunze as a top 3 receiver this whole cycle. I love him a ton. I think really the Chargers fit makes sense, because I think they move on from Mike Williams. I think whoever loses out on the T. Higgins sweepstakes, or if he gets tagged by Cincy, a team that was like, oh, damn, well, Higgins, if he hit the market, that was our guy, they'll make a call. Mike Williams ends up becoming, a new part of that team. Rome Odunze makes perfect sense as a replacement for that. I would have personally gone Malik Neighbors, and I also think for the Giants, they have Jalen Hyatt to create the big plays. I think they'd almost be I mean, if they got Neighbors, trust me, like no complaints here. This would be awesome for the Giants. But you're kind of missing that physical, 6'3" body type that, hey, back shoulder throw, needed to move the sticks, 3rd and 8. This guy is our best. He can win with physicality. He can win the contested catch stuff. That's what we're missing right now. They already have the big play guy. They have Darren Waller in the mix. We'll see what happens with Saquon. But I almost think Rome Odunze is the receiver they're more missing. But again, don't get it wrong. If they land Malik Neighbors, that offense is all the better for it. So I have no major complaints with this. I would have just flipped the order of these two guys. And that's what I did in my last mock draft, actually. Titans, Joe Alt, I think this makes a ton of sense. We've seen this in a ton of mocks, not only mine, but the couple that we've done the grade the mocks for, and I think we'll continue to see this a ton. It's actually amazing that you talk about Olu Fashanu as the young prospect, going to be 21 next year. Joe Alt is actually younger. He won't turn 21 until after the Super Bowl. So pretty cool. This draft class has a ton of super young guys, and I'll make sure to try to note that. Like, there's a handful of guys that, like Terrion Arnold, will turn 20 at the end of training camp. We'll turn 21, at the end of training camp. Like, what? That's insane. But yeah, Joe Alt, I think this fit makes a ton of sense. We'll continue to see a ton of it through draft cycle. Falcons, Dallas Turner, I'm fine with this, or Jared Verse, and then Verse ends up being the next pick, so I'm cool with either order. I think in my last mock, I had it go the other way around. Verse at 8, Turner at 9. I had some Bears fans say, he's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker. I think he's already on the upswing in regards to gaining weight, Dallas Turner, that is. I think if he adds 5 more, he can play with his hand in the dirt full time. 250 pounds. That's about what Jared Verse is. 250, maybe 255. I like both those guys a ton. And both those guys are pretty solid run defenders. So you add them, it's not only great pass rush, weapons, but also really nice run defenders to complement Montez Sweat, who's exactly that. A pretty good pass rusher with a ton of production and a really awesome run defender. So I would love that either way for both these teams. I'd probably stick to what I had in my mock. I think Turner as a compliment to Sweat is awesome. I think Verse plays with a little bit more power right now than Turner does, so I'd like to see him go there to Atlanta because they don't really have that guy to win with power. Jets, Talise Fuaga before Olu Fashanu. Now Daniel Jeremiah is kicking it up another gear. Okay, this is interesting. And maybe this comes down to they have someone in mind to play left tackle and they're solely looking for a right tackle. Maybe that's why. But Talise Fuaga, I think, has one of the higher floors of anybody in this class. I think people have made a lot about his movement skills, but I think that's a little overblown. I think he's a better athlete than a lot of people want to give him credit for. He did it really well as a zone blocking offensive lineman using PFF's grades. Which, hey, don't tell J.J. Watt I'm using that as a resource. But yeah, I think this guy gap or zone scheme fits into it. Mauler in the run game. And man, almost kind of feels like the tackle version of AVT. Like, I just got thinking about what I liked about AVT as a USC interior offensive lineman who played tackle. I see a lot of the similarities, and I would love to see those two get to play on the same O-line. And then no matter what happens here, the question is going to be, okay, what do you do about Mekhi Becton, all that sort of stuff. So, really interesting to see Fuaga over Olu Fashanu there. That's fascinating. Vikings take Byron Murphy, so the first interior defensive lineman. He's the number 1 IDL on my board as well. And the Vikings have got to overhaul that unit. Like, they need corner, they need edge for sure, because, they could be down Hunter and Davenport going into next season. So edge here is great, but you already have the top 2 guys gone. You could go Leatu Latu, but injury questions there. Do you really want to do that? Maybe not. Byron Murphy gives you that immediate pass rush juice. He shores up run defense, and you're going to see a ton of Grady Jarrett comps for this guy. 6'1", 305, 300 pounds. He's totally got the same build as a Grady Jarrett. And two, if you could just take Grady Jarrett and put on the Vikings defensive line, that unit looks a whole lot better. Obviously, Grady Jarrett would be like 95th percentile, potential outcome here for Byron Murphy the second. But you're going to see those comps. That's the potential. And no matter what, it can't get much worse in regards to personnel for that Vikings interior defensive line. So I love that addition a ton, and it's about as high as I've seen him go. Terrion Arnold, actually the same pick that Dane Brugler made for the Broncos. I like it a ton. Sertan's an outside corner. I think Arnold gives you the inside-out versatility. Again, he won't turn 21 until the end of training camp, like August. That is crazy. True redshirt sophomore. So 3 years of college experience. The last 2, he's been fantastic at Alabama, and one of the biggest risers from this last college football season. Great movement skills, and again, inside-out flexibility. So I actually really like him as a compliment to Sertan, who you're going to probably keep on the outside. Here's where Olu Fashanu comes off the board of the Raiders, and just for note, I think if you switched him and Fuaga, I think that totally works too. I think Fuaga would be a really good fit for the Raiders, depending on obviously what they're going to do with their offensive staff and whatnot. But here, Olu Fashanu falls all the way to your lap. I guess in this spot you're flipping him to right tackle, but considering what he's looked like as a pass protector specifically, and how good his footwork is for someone who's not super experienced in regards to football, and even his first year at Penn State, picked it up quickly. And then this year kind of doubled down on that, especially from a pass pro standpoint, except for, a little bit of JT Tuamelo getting into his chest. And other than that power profile, I think, he's an NFL ready guy. He does need to bulk up, add some strength, take away that weakness, but I think he can do that in the next 2 to 3 years, just given he's in his early 20s. He's still growing as a man. But yeah, here you flip him over to the right side with considering how quick he picked up playing left tackle and how good he looked right away. I think flipping over to the right side is not out of the realm of possibilities. And then Saints fans here, I know this will make y'all happy. I've had a really hard time getting y'all a quarterback. Bo Nix off the board here for Jeremiah. Ultimately, I kind of think he's the Denver Broncos guy. I think he's going to be the dude Peyton really likes. But this isn't a bad one either. Like, there's almost a little Derek Carr in regards to his processing and ability to attack underneath. But Bo Nix, at least in college, was more willing to push the ball deep. We'll see how that translates to the NFL level, but I think he's got the arm strength to be able to do just that. Like, I think he'd be totally fine. The tricky part here would be like, how do you move on from Derek Carr in that contract? But the benefit to that is for the New Orleans Saints, if they did make this pick, look, there's 5 to 6 quarterbacks who could go round 1, if not there, somewhere in the top 50. And like Kirk Cousins, a free agent. Russ is going to be on the move. There's only so many quarterbacks that are like top 32 caliber, starting caliber. And right now there's more teams looking for quarterbacks than there are available. So maybe there's a world where Derek Carr gets dealt and the Saints are eating half the dead money and then the new team's eating the other half. And because of that, the draft pick isn't as lucrative. I could totally see that. So don't rule that out, especially if they do go in the direction of Bo Nix here at 14 or Michael Penix or a J.J. McCarthy, something like that. So I'd be really interested to see what or if there is a trade market for Derek Carr. Colts get Brock Bowers, absolute steal of value. And, for a team that's always been kind of known for utilizing tight ends a ton, I cover VCU Rams basketball, but Mo Alley Cox versus Brock Bowers, give me Bowers any day of the week. It's pretty clear who the better tight end is there. And it's also a really nice inline blocker, which only makes that run game more potent. That's already a team that had a big bounce back from their offensive line. Love it a ton. One more pass catcher, and also like another blocker in the run game for Anthony Richardson, which makes this really, really fun. And it's just another interesting body type you have to tackle when you already have to deal with Michael Pittman, assuming they bring him back, Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson. I love it a ton. I like this fit, and it's just tough to mock Brock Bowers because does he fall to 15? It's not impossible because he's a tight end, but probably not. Troy Fautanu going to the Seattle Seahawks. You'll see this a ton throughout draft cycle. I like this interior offensive line class. Him, Barton, JPJ, Jax Powers Johnson. That is like a lot of those guys. 16 may be a little rich for my blood, but I'm assuming Jeremiah is not doing any trades here, and we haven't seen any. So let's just say that's the status quo for him until we get deeper in this process. So with no trades, I don't hate it as much. But in a perfect scenario, like John Snyder does what he does, he likes to trade back, accumulate more picks, and then land a Fautanu somewhere there in the early to mid 20s. I think that'd be the ideal situation. Jacksonville Jaguars, Quinyon Mitchell. So going into that outside corner room, that's really an interesting kind of idea. I think Darius Williams plays better as an outside corner. Could they just upgrade from him in general? Maybe. And maybe that's what they're thinking here with Quinyon Mitchell. Going to be interested to see who becomes the next defensive coordinator for this team. That will kind of give us an idea of what type of corner maybe they would go with at 17. I think offensive line's in play. I think receivers in play. Corners certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. Honestly, if it was me, I would have gone Cooper DeJean here and played him in the slot, kept Williams on the outside. And if you've been around the channel for any length of time, my favorite player to team destination of last draft cycle was Brian Branch to the Jags, because I felt like he was the one missing piece there they don't have on that roster right now on that side of the ball, and shores up the run defense, helps out the coverage side. And Cooper DeJean, I think, could do a lot of the same stuff. But Quinyon Mitchell, great ball skills. Ton of ball production at college, and a lot of his stats, lower level competition, but are just like off the charts. So kind of an opportunity to pair him up with solid size with Tyson Campbell. Don't hate it whatsoever. It's worth a shot. J.C. Latham into the Bengals. He's going to be a polarizing tackle prospect. Like, I feel like there's going to be a lot of people who have him at tackle 3 and kind of see him close to that top 2 that I think should go in the top 10 with Olu and Alt. And then there's going to be some that are like, he's so overrated, has tools but doesn't use them properly. And because of that, he'll be like people's OT 5 or 6 or 7. Like, I think that's going to be the spectrum. There's going to be people who really like Latham. There's going to be people who think he's a little overblown. I actually tend to fall somewhere there in the middle. I think right now OT 5 or 6 for me. Tools are there, great athlete, a ton of play strength. Sometimes, though you don't always see it's a little inconsistent. I think at the last play of Alabama's season, right, like he gets blown up, trips up, Milrow. That's the year for the Crimson Tide, and ultimately the last play as Nick Saban being the head coach of Alabama. Kind of sad to look back at, but for the most part, he's awesome, and you see that play strength, you see the movement skills, and he's really good zone blocking. scheme fit, but I also think play strength and his size gap totally fits as well. And here for the Bengals, it's just like, dude, can we get anybody competent to play right tackle? It hasn't really worked with Lyle Collins. Jonah Williams is certainly a player you can upgrade from. So hopefully this is your long-term piece. And pairing him up with Orlando Brown Jr., I think that would actually be a good mentor for him to have. Kind of similar kind of outlooks coming out of college in a lot of ways. Just, one guy going round one guy who fell a little bit. Leatu Latu to the Rams. I think this makes a ton of sense. Just get an NFL-ready plus-level pass rusher day one. May not be the most athletic dude, but you got Byron Young on the other side, who's the more explosive first-step guy. Leatu Latu, you just draft and know, hey, full arsenal of moves, awesome at the hand fighting, and a B to B plus level athlete. Like, he's good enough. Like, he more than checks boxes. And as long as he passes the medical, he'll be a top 3 edge rusher on a lot of teams' boards if they're not concerned about the medical. And I can see the Rams. Look, they haven't had first round picks. I could see them wanting to be a little risky here. Like, I could see where they're like, hey, cool, we're not used to having these. Yeah, there's a little injury risk with Latu, but if he stays on the field like he did the last 2 years at UCLA, that's also kind of the cool thing here. You get to keep him in LA. That's fun. But yeah, if he produces like he did the last 2 years, and Byron Young going to year 2, and you got Aaron Donald there, and you got Kobe Turner as the rookie sacks leader for interior defensive linemen, okay, that pass rush looks sick. You could basically just win with those 4 guys, which would be really, really potent. I'd really be excited to see what Raheem Morris does if he did have that type of pass rush up front. Steelers go Amarius Mims. It sounds like they're going to move on from Chukwuma Okorafor, but leave it to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The best possible tackle tandem, and trust me, I'm not the world's biggest Chukwuma Okorafor fan. I'm actually probably on the lower side of how I feel about him than even Steelers fans. But the best possible tackle tandem that the Steelers could have played is Roderick Jones on the left side and Chukwuma Okorafor on the right side. And, even after the last game of the season, Roderick Jones is out there saying, I'm more comfortable playing on the left side. Yeah, I mean, and this is also the same team that played Marcus Golden for 50 snaps, Nick Herbig for 20, Keanu Benton is struggling to get above 20 snaps a game. Just player management, still a huge major question mark. I would hope they go in this direction to draft a right tackle, and that would lead me to believe that Broderick Jones is going to flip over to the left side, where he has, again, stated he is more comfortable. So I wouldn't hate this pick a ton, or at all. Pittsburgh's kind of a tough team, though, because, Jack Sparrows-Johnson, maybe 20 a little rich for some people, but I think he's an awesome center. And, dude, Mason Cole cannot be the center for the Steelers next year. Right tackle's a need. Corner's obviously a need. This is a deep enough receiver class. You can probably get someone in the 3rd, 4th round. That's kind of the Steelers' sweet spot for drafting that position anyways. Linebacker is going to be a need in that same range, though. So, I don't know. Safety, you could use another one of those guys. A lot of holes, a lot of things to figure out. And this is not a team that normally patches it up in free agency. At least beyond more than an $8 million deal to some veteran. Going to be really interested to see what the Steelers' free agency plan is, and that will give us a nice direction of what they want to do in the draft. The most exciting thing here for me as a Steelers fan would see, okay, you're drafting Amarius Mims, he'll play right tackle, Jones is moving over to the left side. You have these bulldog tackles for the future. Let's see how it goes. Dolphins take Brian Thomas Jr. Dude, this would be awesome. This would just be #fun to watch. Great ball tracking skills. Awesome vertical speed. Only ran 3 different routes, but let's be honest. I mean, in this Miami offense, if he's running hitches, comebacks, and goes, that's all we need. And a compliment to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. And I had a mock, actually the last one that came out on the channel, where I had Xavier Worthy go in the 2nd round to Miami. And look, with these speed guys, you can't play them the same number of snaps as you do some of these other dudes, because they can't be winded. Also, if they start to get nicked up and banged up and playing less than 100%, speed starts to diminish, which takes away the main reason why you have that tandem, right? So, adding receiver depth is kind of a sneaky priority I think this team should have, because, Braxton Berrios is, he's just a guy. And, Chase Claypool, come on, Mapletron, that was a joke. I'm trying to think about, Cedric Wilson, they signed a decent money. He could be expendable this offseason given his, potential dead cap hit. I had to look into it a little bit more. But I think if they got a legit number 3 receiver, whether it's Xavier Worthy in the 2nd round, Brian Thomas Jr. in the 1st round, it'd actually go a long way to make sure Jalen Waddle's playing 100% year-round. Tyreek Hill, same thing. Also, Hill, getting up there in age, so want to limit his snaps from that perspective as well. So not going to be a whole lot of Dolphins fans. I'm some Dolphins fans probably look at this and are like, oh, that's fun, that's cool, I dig that. And then there's some that's like, no, we have bigger needs. And I'm not going to argue with that. Interior offensive line, would love that fit. Graham Barton here makes a ton of sense. Jack Powers-Johnson makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, keeping those other 2 fresh and adding Brian Thomas Jr. to that offense, just making him more explosive, that's a really fun idea. Tyler Guyton to the Eagles, I think this makes a ton of sense. He is definitely one of their types, great movement skills, mauler in the run game, has held up then some in pass protection at Oklahoma, ton of pass sets under his belt, multi-year starter. This is your Lane Johnson contingency. He's probably a little too big to kick inside to play guard, because I do wonder what happens. Kelsey, assuming that he hangs it up. Cam Jurgens was kind of drafted to be that Jason Kelsey replacement, so what does that mean? Is he not playing right guard? Could you play Tyler Guyton there for the time being, and Lane Johnson plays another year or two at right tackle? Maybe it just becomes a position they're looking to address in free agency, or I don't know, later on in the draft, something like that. But I like this Guyton to Eagles fit a ton. Him, Braylon Trice, I think are really, really solid, like long-term replacement pieces. Trice for Brandon Graham, Guyton for Lane Johnson. Chop Robinson to the Texans, dude. This type of athlete to that defensive line would just be so much fun to watch. No guarantee they bring back Jonathan Grenard either, so that's the other side of this coin. He might just be replacing a starter. But if you get Grenard back, and while Chop Robinson's really kind of learning the ways of being a pass rusher, and he's just kind of a special athlete, but he's your third guy, he's your DPR, coming, and playing for a head coach that's always prioritized a deep edge rotation. Doesn't matter if you're a DPR, you still play a relatively significant role in that defense. I love this a ton. In a perfect world, like Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy, I'd love to see them get that interior presence. But I'm not mad about Chop Robinson whatsoever. I think that's a great spot for him to go if they bring back Grenard. Even if they don't bring back Grenard, then I think him and Will Anderson, I think, is still an awesome 1-2 punch. And D'Amico Ryans will coach him up and get him where he needs to be. Cowboys, Jordan Morgan, I think this is a great fit. I think this is about the range where I can dig Jordan Morgan in this spot. You keep Tyler Smith at left guard. That's my preference. So I think this is like the ideal outcome. Patrick Paul probably in play too. Team that does pass the ball a good bit. A guy with a ton of pass blocking sets under his belt. Pterodactyl wings for arms. Could be an alluring option as well. I like Morgan's movement skills a little bit better for that blocking team. Packers go Graham Barton. This could be your Josh Myers replacement if you think he's if Barton can play center and would be a good one. He can also play either guard spots, and then maybe move Elton Jenkins to one of the tackle spots. If I had to guess, I would say Graham Barton's probably playing left guard. You're kicking Elton Jenkins, over to play right guard. And that would be, and then, Runyon just kind of becomes a backup. And then that means Rasheed Walker, Zach Tommy, or tackle tandem in the future. But this also does give you a contingency if, Rasheed Walker gets banged up. Graham Barton can be a spot starter there at tackle, too. So just gives this team a ton of flexibility, which I like a lot. Then the Buccaneers, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., really physical guy. I've said this 1,000 times, plays bigger than his size. The one thing is, and I've said this 1,000 times as well, I need to see the 40. Because when he gets beat, he gets really grabby, and to me that signals that he doesn't have confidence that he's fast enough to get back into the play. So, if he runs a good enough 40, then cool. Then yeah, late 1, early 2, I'm totally here for this. Super physical. Doesn't have a ton of ball production. He's more of a guy who plays the receiver versus playing the ball. But, the forced incompletions all kind of speak to the result that I'm looking for the most. I'd love to have it to be interceptions, but ultimately your job is to limit completions, and forcing completions is a stat that I care about a lot. So and he's got a lot of them. He's done that really, really well at Missouri, and again, kind of plays bigger than his actual frame. Inside out flexibility too. Multi-year starter at Missouri. So no matter what the Bucs want to do, honestly, I don't hate the idea of him playing on the inside here for the Bucs. Keep Davis and Dean, who you're paying a lot of money, keep them on the outside, get an upgrade at the slot. I like that a ton. Cardinals then with the Houston pick, take Cooper DeJean. I mean, I have a hard time taking DeJean with the level of athlete that he is, falls this far. I would love this a ton. This team needs another outside corner to partner up with Garrett Williams. But they also need a slot, man. And I said this whole cycle. I really like the idea of Cooper DeJean playing the slot. He's a great coverage defender, so I want to take away those easy throws. And if you're playing zone, kind of have him just being a lurker over the middle of the field. He's a great special teams player, too, so you have that added benefit. But if he's lurking over the middle of the field, QB makes a mistake, ball gets in his hands, it's a decent shot that becomes 6 in your favor. But yeah, it could be a tight end eraser. It could be, a running back option depending on who you're playing. And hey, this is a team in the division with Christian McCaffrey. Him playing the slot, maybe that could be part of his assignment. But also a great tackler and some run game reinforcement. So I like the idea of DeJean. We'll see what his true position is. I love the idea of him being the slot of the future for the Arizona Cardinals. Johnny Newton, the Bills. This is a really fun one. Ed Oliver kind of picking it up, but never been a high-level run defender. Johnny Newton, I think you get an immediate reinforcement of the run game, who they've had some guys who step in and, like Daquan Jones and, Jordan Phillips. They had a couple of guys who've been okay run defenders, but no one who's really, really good at it. And I think Newton would give them probably the best, especially during the Ed Oliver era, the best run game, partner to go alongside Ed Oliver. But he's also a polished pass rusher, quick out of his stance. stance, gets to guards before they're ready for him. So I like this a ton. This is kind of an underrated spot. I also think this is a great Braylon Trice spot, or one of those edge rushers that may fall to this spot. Like we'll see what happens with the medical. Leatu Latu, maybe he becomes a faller. I could see the Bills having the risk appetite here at 28 for someone like that. Chiefs, Tez Walker. I'm a big Tez Walker guy. I think right now he's my receiver 6. I don't know. I keep going back and forth. This receiver class is just too damn good. Like, I don't know, man. There's just gonna be so many special guys to watch next year, and it's great product for the NFL. But for the Chiefs, this makes a ton of sense, right? I think Rashee Rice they're starting to lean on him a little bit more as a separator, which makes me feel more comfortable about them going. And A.D. Mitchell, who's a work in progress as a route runner. Keon Coleman, who definitely is a work in progress as a route runner. Tez Walker, I think there's other parts of his game I like more. So good that Rice has kind of come along as that separator, but he's also a yak weapon. Tez Walker gives you a little bit more of that prototypical size, 6'2", kind of what I thought Rashee Rice would weigh in at and check in at in regards to height and arm length and stuff like that, but he didn't. But yeah, I like this a ton. Probably would have gone A.D. Mitchell over Tez Walker here, but I don't hate going the other way either. Nate Wiggins, look, I think him or Arnold right now are going to be the first corners off the board, or Cooper DeJean again, guide to your athlete, so don't count that out. One of those three is probably going to be one of the first corners off the board, so I don't see him lasting till 30, long story short. This would be a dream come true, though. But if you tell me that Nate Wiggins ends up on the Detroit Lions, I'm telling you they're moving up because they're not getting him at 30. It's just not happening. But I love the fit. I love them addressing a need that's obviously glaring. 49ers getting Kool-Aid McKinstry. Man, if he fell this far, that's a really interesting ad. Him plus Charvarius Ward. That could be a really fun 1-2 punch, plus the pass rush in front of him. Man, his man press ability, not letting receivers get off the line of scrimmage, forcing a quarterback to hold the ball a little longer against that pass rush, kind of feels like a match made in heaven. So much of my attention for San Francisco has been on the offensive line, especially in the first round. A lot of good right tackles. Jackson Powers-Johnson, another great name to keep an eye on here. Graham Barton, if he makes it here. Troy Fautano to play left guard. All those options are on the table. And then sometimes I'll, in the second round, add a corner for San Francisco. But I could see them flipping it around, right? Like, this is a good class to grab a couple of interior offensive linemen in day 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think San Francisco has a second and a third. I'd have to look at it, obviously, and I don't have it right in front of me. But if they have 2 day 2 picks, then they could easily grab a guard and a center, a center and a tackle, a guard and a tackle, some combination of a couple different starters there. So don't hate that whatsoever. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, kind of an interesting thought, and I haven't had him fall this far in a draft yet, so this would be great value for San Francisco. And then we get to the last pick, the Baltimore Ravens, Troy Franklin. I get what they're going for, and this sounds like a great OBJ contingency, because I can kind of see him doing the same stuff, and who knows if OBJ returns. He's only on a 1-year deal. I feel like if you're going to draft a receiver, you need someone who can beat man coverage. So at this point in the draft, there's not a whole lot of those guys, right? So I think Zay Flowers is awesome against off coverage and zone. I think he's their guy for that. And I think Rashad Bateman, because he's a little bit lighter than what I think he was at one point at Minnesota, kind of struggles with man press too. If they could find a guy to be that, go-to option, which I know Mark Andrews is kind of that against man coverage, but I don't know, Jalen Polk's the best option because I see him as a slot. I don't know, maybe ultimately it's someone you take in the second round, right? But if they could find a man press beating wide receiver, damn, that offense has just about everything you want in it, and they have an answer for anything you throw at them. That's why I really hope they can get a man beating type of wide receiver, man press in specific. I don't know if Troy Franklin's that, just because a little bit more of a slender build. Don't know if the play strength's really there and equipped for that. So I have to really think about it. Maybe an Xavier Legette. That's kind of maybe the guy I'm thinking of here. Like that man press guy, wins with physicality, quick off the line. Yeah, maybe Xavier Legette. Maybe that's the guy I start mocking towards the Ravens a ton. But hey, you know what? That's going to do it for our reaction to Daniel Jeremiah and the first grade the mock that we're going to do for Jeremiah this draft cycle. Can't wait to see the next iteration of his mock. We already did Dane Brugler. If you missed that came out on Friday. Definitely go back and check that out on the channel. Get my thoughts on that mock draft put together by the Athletic's own Dane Brugler. But guys, let me know what you thought down below in the comment section. Who went too high? Who went too low? What fits were your favorite? Which ones don't make sense to you? And of course, let me know your favorite squad and what did you think of the selection Daniel Jeremiah gave your favorite team. Guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Want to see more football content like this. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teach, and I'm signing off.